While the global nomadism of the 21st century has come to a halt in the pandemic stricken world, the literary nomadism has had an unprecedented growth on digital media. Today, I have with me at TYMS Academy's poetry session a terrific combination of a poet and a diplomat who is called rightly by Vijay Sheshadri as the world poet because he is indeed a poet nomad. I'll just give you an example how. Just a year ago, Abhay Kumar was in Brazil as the deputy ambassador before being posted to Madagascar as an ambassador. And now, when he's in Madagascar, he has just made his presence felt in Latin America through the launch of his poetry collection, The Alphabets of Latin America. When Abhay Kumar was in Latin America, likewise, he made his presence felt in Kathmandu through his poetry book, The Eight-Eyed Lord of Kathmandu. It's actually very difficult for me to sum up his prolific works or for me to spell the titles of his works in this introduction. But to put it short, he has published 9 poetry collections. He has edited 4 anthologies of poems with Bloomsbury, one of which, 100 Great Indian Poems, has been translated into many languages. And Abhay has been given the SARC Literary Award in 2013. He was also invited to Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. to record his poems. Thank you, Abhay, and welcome to TMYS Academy.
Thank you, Shelly, for having me.
So, Abhay, I'd like to begin with the idea of poetry nomadism. When we talk about poetry nomad, we talk about travel, we talk about space, we talk about geography. You know, while the crossover between diplomacy and poetry is understandable because, as you said, during the launch of your 100 Great Indian Poems Portuguese edition in Brazil, the two are about words, words, and words. What I'd like you to reflect on now is the crossover between geography and poetry. Because your books that I know, that I have read, these are kind of literary geographies. These are the guidebooks for tourists. Anybody would, for example, your book 8, The Eight-Eyed Lord of Kathmandu. If one reads this book, one will know a lot more about Kathmandu than one can know through some random Google research or some tourist guidebook. Because your poems will bring the essence of the place in your, for the readers. So could you just throw some light on this?
So the best way is to read some poems to give some idea about what, how does it sound, to write about places, and one of the poems I would like to read is from the Alphabets of Latin America, which has just been released, and it's a poem about Buenos Aires. And when we think of Buenos Aires, we think of Borges, George Louis Borges. And so I went to Buenos Aires and was looking for him in the streets, thinking that, I'll find him at, La Recoleta Cemetery. But here is the poem, Looking for Borges in Buenos Aires, from the recently released The Alphabets of Latin America. Mm-hmm. I know of one Greek labyrinth, which is a single straight line. Along that line, so many philosophers have lost themselves. It's a quote from Borges, mm-hmm. And the poem is, looking for Borges, I came to Buenos Aires. I found him nowhere. I searched all the libraries, all the labyrinthine streets of the city. He was not even at La Recoleta. I found merely a mirror and a face staring at me in disbelief. It is hard to believe. Everyone told me Borges lived in Argentina.
Wow,
Uh,
that's wonderful.
so this is a poem about Borges and about Buenos Aires, which comes from reading Borges. Because, you know, if you read Borges, Borges is about mirrors and labyrinths and uh, the non-dualism, which comes from Indian philosophy, that I
Mm-hmm.
and you are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Borges says that, you know, uh, that the world is indivisible
Mm-hmm.
and time is indivisible. It's a cyclic time,
Mm-hmm.
what he believes in. So this poem is about, you know, about his philosophy. That's why, you know, the mirror here is a, a is a way of, you know, expressing Borges' thoughts and seeing when you look at the mirror and you see Borges there instead of yourself. This is what Borges was hinting at, you know. So this poem is, you know, so that's what I do, you know. I go to places, I study about the history of that place, major personalities who inhabited that place.
Mm-hmm.
For example, here I bring La Recoleta. La Recoleta, if you have been to Buenos Aires, La
Mm-hmm.
Recoleta is the major cemetery of Buenos Aires, and everybody important is buried there. But
Mm-hmm.
Borges is not there, you know. So bringing all these elements together uh, constructs a poem, and then bringing the lyricism into it and bringing the surprise element into it. You know, this is how I try to write a poem about a place.
Mm-hmm. And also there is something like, geopoetics, like Elizabeth Bishop, her in her poem geography and locale are very important subject matters, and I sense the same in your poems. In your poems is eco poetry, which is that there's a kind of consciousness, a kind of awareness of ecology, and there's also love ecology, that is a kind of a play between nature, beauty, and love. So this is very interesting. And what you just said about, like, when you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at you, not yourself but the poet. This brings me to the second topic that I want to discuss with you about the other in poetry. When we look at the other, the first we have is a gaze, an observation, we observe the other. Then we move on to either romance or an understanding, depending on how we are able to switch our minds, how we are able to be outside of ourselves. So how do you do this other, how do you bring the other, how do you summon the other in your poems?
Yes, so I try to personify the poems, and you
Mhm.
know, the places take personalities, and uh, I become the other, just as Borges said. You know, so so I enter that place. Uh,
Mhm.
for example, you know, a poem about Delhi. My smell, my nakedness
Mhm.
entices hordes of human flesh
Mhm.
from faraway lands,
Mhm.
traders, emperors,
Mhm.
marauders. I pose nude
Mhm.
up on the hill
Mhm.
below, a feast
Mhm.
of eagles, possessed, intoxicated. Here, Delhi becomes a person, and and through that person, I want to tell this the essence of Delhi, what it is.
Mhm.
This personification also is a characteristic of uh, poets who have written centuries ago. For example, Kalidas in
Mhm.
his Meghdut, he personifies clouds and
Mhm.
personifies rivers, and they become persons,
Mhm.
and uh, uh, clouds are attracted to rivers. So he also brings this sensuous element among these
Mhm.
um, these entities which we think are not alive, but poet's imagination is uh, all, and to bring life uh, in non-living, voiceless entities. That's what
Mhm.
the job of a poet is.
Yeah, yeah, very true. So I think it's a very humanist approach that you have towards poetry. You have a very humanist approach. But tell me something, Abhay. Do you think, if you look back at yourself when you began writing poetry, and at this time when you have worked on a lot of poetry anthologies and your own poetry books, do you see an evolution inside of you, your own evolution, your own growth, your own trajectory of humanity? Do you see a change in that? You feel a difference
Yes,
because of
I
poetry?
do. In terms of, I think, I am much better read now. Uh, I have read, I think the difference is that I have read more poetry now than I had when I had started. And
Mhm.
I think that makes a difference, because when you read more, your
Mhm.
writing itself becomes much more mature and much
Mhm.
more pithy.
Mhm.
I think you realize that you should get rid of non-essential words, because poetry is basically essential language.
Mhm.
So this whole idea mm, of minimalism comes in. How to express more through less words.
Mhm.
I think that's the first principle. Also, the first principle of diplomacy, that say more in less words.
Uh-huh.
And also, I think more you read, more you realize that you should write only essential things and publish essential things. So it's not
Mhm.
for the sake of writing more books, uh, or writing more poems. uh,
Mhm.
you want to do it for the things which matter to you. For
Mhm.
example, climate matters to me. For example, celebration of the other cultures matters to me.
Mhm.
So all these things, I think it comes with, and also this humility comes, that so much more, uh, what you are trying to do is to just add a drop in the ocean of literature, an ocean of great literature, because there is so much great literature has been written before. So
Mhm.
how are you able to add to it? How you do the value addition to what is already there,
Mhm.
and not add some junk to it. So
Mhm.
so I think all these realizations come, and you grow as a poet, I guess.
Yeah,
There are no
but
definite answers, but
that's
these
true.
are
But
some of my thoughts and observations.
yeah, but you make me think about this. That how do you know that what you've written is junk and what is not junk? How do you know that yourself, or do you like discuss with friends, poet friends?
I think you know it from the you know uh, from, if you can further edit your poems, if you can further remove uh, words from your poems, that means that you have not you've not reached the final stage. You have to kind of keep uh, chiseling it, and chiseling it till the time that there is no more to be chiseled.
Oh,
so
interesting.
so I think that's one thing. And then second thing is that uh, do these poems say anything? Do they have something in it? I mean, say in the sense, not a message, but maybe just being themselves, they are a thing of beauty.
Mhm.
So these things come at a later stage. Mm, when you look back, you find that you have poems where you can get rid of so many words, and then you realize that it's
Mhm.
uh, you need to work more on it.
Mhm. This is very interesting. I'm actually reminded about this tip that Nizam Ezekiel gave to Tenzin Sundu, the Tibetan poet, when he was in Mumbai. That in your poem, everything has to have a meaning. A comma has to have a meaning. A space has to have a meaning. And you have to ask yourself that if you remove this comma, would it make any difference to the poem? If it makes a difference to the poem, then you need the comma. If it doesn't make any
Correct.
difference, it's not necessary. So this is a very interesting thing to understand, how we chisel the poems and how we understand that now this poem could be essential because there's nothing more that you can change in the poem, and it has a message. And I have personally seen it that when you were here in Brazil, you were so conscious about not using plastic, not using polythene, and even at the farmers market you would just not take polythene but buy things in a box, in a carton, in that wooden box. So that's very interesting. And I'm thinking about what comes to mind in my mind right now is Earth Anthem, which has been
Right.
translated into, I think, 52 languages, if I'm not wrong.
Correct. Right.
And it's also been rendered into a proper anthem
Dr.
by
L. Subramaniam, and been sung by uh, Kavita
Mhm,
Krishnamurti ji, and also it's been performed across the world by the National Symphony Orchestra of Brasilia and
mhm,
the Amsterdam Conservatorium, and it's used by several schools, thousands of them across the world, who
mhm,
use it to celebrate Earth Day or World Environment Day. And
mhm,
recently, this year, the United Nations also used it to celebrate Earth Day in April this year. So it's sort of, I thought that the idea is that we have anthems for schools, universities, football teams, but we don't
mhm,
have a common anthem for our planet. And
mhm,
uh, I mean, the philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam hints that we should have something in common.
mhm,
The job of 20 the job of poets in 21st century is also to create common symbols and
mhm,
common so that we can come together on a single platform. And what can be a better way to to have something in common for the whole humanity than a song, a
mhm,
song which we all can sing. And and what can be that song? That song can be only about our planet, which we share. And it does not matter whether we are from Bihar or Bengal or Brazil, or we have one planet in common, and this is the only
mhm,
home. If you look at the reality, the organic truth, uh, there is an individual which is independent in oneself, and there is planet which is organically whole. It's an interdependent, uh, uh, or like an organism. So
mhm,
rest of the things in the middles are all man-made, whether it's families or states or uh, uh, imagined communities, which we call nations, uh, or several identities, caste, religion, all are man-made. But you
mhm,
have two natural things, the individual and the planet. And I think there should be a relationship between the individual and the planet. And today, when our only cosmic home faces the challenge of climate change and biodiversity loss, I think it's
mhm,
the time for us, the poets and the musicians, to unite the humanity. And not why only humanity? In Earth Anthem, it's Earth Anthem. It's not a world song. There's a difference, It's an anthem for not only human beings but also for all the species with whom we share this planet, and
mhm,
with whom we are interdependent. The wave of life. So
mhm,
so there are lines in this anthem uh, like all the continents and all the oceans.
mhm,
United we stand as flora and fauna. United we stand as species of one earth. And then all the people and all the nations, one for all and all for one. United
mhm,
we unfurl the blue marble flag. So there are these lines, and it begins with our cosmic oasis, cosmic blue pearl, the most
mhm,
beautiful planet in the universe. So,
mhm,
so these are, this is. I thought that this Earth Anthem could be one way to bring us together as one human family. and
Mhm.
we can have our own independent identities, whatever
Mhm.
identities we prefer, but we can also share a common identity of belonging to the planet.
Mhm. Right. I think only a poet nomad like you can think of this kind of a universal stage for humanity to come together as flora and fauna. This is amazing. Abhay, I would be very grateful if you could read some poems for our audience, your own poems.
Yes, so this is a book called Capitals, which I edited, and it has poems on 100 and by the 185 poets uh, from several countries, and on 185 capital cities of the world. So
Mhm.
I'm reading my own poems, which I have written about. So this book is dedicated to, this anthology is dedicated to a common, uh, the call for a common earth anthem. And the idea was to here, I'm going to read some poems. I want to take you to Tunis, to Africa.
Mhm.
uh, Tunis, it's my own poem. I rest in the great heat of the desert,
Mhm.
under the shadow of the Carthage.
Mhm.
I hear the footsteps of the Roman soldiers. I
Mhm.
hear the sound of carnage and destruction. As I wake up, all alleys lead to El Jaitunia. I
Mhm.
run through the narrow labyrinths of Medina,
Mhm.
leaving behind the busy souks. I
Mhm.
rush out of the old town
Mhm.
to take a breath of fresh air at
Mhm.
the avenue Habib Bourguiba,
Mhm.
at the Ville Nouvelle.
Mhm.
I find Hannibal
Mhm.
sauntering aimlessly. I
Mhm.
say hello. He smiles and whispers in my ears how to cross the Alps.
Wow.
Here is a poem from uh, poem about, if you have heard about a country called Mauritania and its capital called Nouakchott, which is in Western uh, Africa, and it was center of one of the three great African empires, the Ghana Empire, and it's a poem about the capital city Nouakchott,
Mhm.
a reddish Martian flatland in the middle of the desert, haunted
Mhm.
by winds, shifting sand dunes, and droughts. A caravan stopped from the seaport of Atlantic, strange, sleepy, unassuming, laid back,
Mhm.
idiosyncratic, somewhat urban, somewhat nomadic,
Mhm.
intricate streets, one-storied buildings. The Grand Mosque rises like the full moon over the city.
Mhm.
Scores of tourists treasure hunt for Saharan meteorites. Fishermen arrive in brightly painted sea canoes.
Mhm.
Donkey carts ply on the road, loaded with fish, passing through overflowing kiwis, frantic markets. Nomads relocate. A city
Mhm.
migrates within a city.
Beautiful. That's
I like, I was reading these poems today after a long time, and I think I like the images of, those uh, painted canoes, fishermen coming in those. I can see that, visualize that, and I can see these donkey carts plying, carrying fish in Nouakchott. So, so these are some of, I would read also from, you know, other parts of the world if you like, but
Mhm.
uh, I
let's
can.
let's let's, yeah, let's read more poems in the second after the second question answer session. You know,
Okay.
as you said that you could visualize everything, I could also see that there's an amalgamation of the landscape, the architecture, the celestial bodies, the fishermen, the market, and everything. So that's interrelatedness, this amalgamation. And the last line you said, a city migrates in the city. That's what you said,
Within
right?
the city, yes,
In
yes.
the city. That's really beautiful. You could see that, you know, things shifting and amalgamating, a constant movement. That's really beautiful. Now I want to move to the next question. You have edited about four anthologies, out of which 100 great Indian poems have been translated into various languages. I like to ask you that
Right.
what goes into the editing of these anthologies as an editor? How do you make the choice? For example, you have tried to capture 3,000 years of Indian poetry, and you're selected from 28 languages, right? So what goes
Right.
into kind of a very, you know, very, it's a very big project to bring so much in just one book, you know?
So, I think all these anthologies are born out of curiosity, and lack of knowledge. What Wisława Szymborska, she in her Nobel lecture, she said the most important uh, thing in this world is I don't know, and everything comes from this I don't know. And when I started reading poetry, I of course had read the Hindi poetry in my childhood, Ramdhari Singh Dinkar, and I was very fascinated with the lines of Ramdhari Singh Dinkar because they brought energy to me. His book Rashmi Rathi, and
Mm-hmm.
especially the Tirtiya Sarg of Rashmi Rathi, I still remember. But I had not read poetry from the rest of India. And when I was editing Capitals and bringing world poetry to India uh, from 185 countries, I also wanted to know what is poetry like in Telugu or Kannada or Punjabi or
Mm-hmm.
Coke Baroque, you know. So I started reading these anthologies which had been edited earlier, and then started. So the what I felt that poetry written in English language in India is sometimes not rooted to the soil of India. So I had this because I myself come from Bihar, and I have, you know, I have grown up reading Hindi poetry, and uh, I felt that there's some kind of disconnect. So so I thought that I should I should see that what poetry in translation from other Indian languages are like, and uh, and I realized that reading those poems, translated poems from other Indian languages, I felt that, oh, this is what I was looking for. This is what I like, because these all poems are rooted. They come from, they have the smell, the fragrance of the soil, and so this idea of great poems were born. I was also unhappy about the focus of the modern anthologists on poets rather than on poems, because I know some, I have read, for example, I told you an example of what I grew reading, like Rashmi Rathi of Tulsi, of Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. But I remember the poem. I don't know much about Ramdhari Singh Dinkar. I mean, I know that he was a poet and a wonderful poet, but what I remember are those words of the poems. So I thought that the focus of poetry should be poem, not the poet, and whole this personality cult of poets. I mean, for example, I remember one good poem of Tagore, and that's good enough for me. Where the mind is without fear. And that, I mean, that it does not matter if he wins, if he had won the Nobel Prize or not, but those words matter to me, and they keep me company. So I thought that I should bring the focus to poems and poetry rather than the poets. That's how the 100 Great Indian Poems was born, and I read. thousands of poems and then selected particular poems. So what was the selection criteria? So the selection was the poems which sort of, I'm a vegetarian, but I would, give you a non-vegetarian example. People, who eat kakori kebabs, so they say that it melts in the mouth, So I instantly connected with the poems which melted in my mind,
I see.
and without any resistance,
Mhm.
without any words becoming a barrier in the flow of the poem.
Mhm.
And then also the subject, matter, that what the poem was talking about. So basically, I think, I'm more like a minimalist, and this is my preference,
Mhm.
so I like poems which are more minimal in nature and
Mhm.
appeal to the senses immediately,
Mhm.
without much without much convolutions, or looking for, searching for meanings. I mean, of
Mhm.
course, there are some poets who like to have their poems as riddles, and
Mhm.
then you have to read it 10 times to get what the poet wants to say. I think
Mhm.
I like the completely opposite kind of poems, and I think that a poem which immediately enters you and has an appeal to you
Mhm.
uh, is a great poem.
Absolutely. This actually makes me think about translation. When you say that poems that melt in your mind, poems that you don't have to go back to reach 10 times to understand, poems that put you off are not the poems that you would select or you think are great, right? But the poems that really immediately affect you, poems that melt in your mind, that cause a difference to your thoughts or whatever, are the poems that you
Yes,
would think are great. So this is one criteria, right? But then
right.
this is for you. And I remember reading in the anthology in the introduction that you also wrote that these poems are great for me. Some poems would be great for you, so you should go and make your own anthologies. You should go and create your own anthologies. So
Correct.
that
So everybody should do that. Keep a
Mhm.
collection of poems which appeal to you and read them again and again,
Mhm.
so that you benefit from them, and they stay company. For example, I remember the poems I really like. For example, where the mind is without fear,
Uh-huh.
where the head
Right.
is held high,
Uh-huh.
uh, where the world has not been broken up into fragments
Mhm.
by narrow domestic walls. Look at this poem. So this stays with you, and it becomes your own poem, and
Mhm.
that's how I think a great poem is, which is a company to you, a lifetime company to you, a lifetime partner.
Mhm. Very well said. I'm thinking about capitals. In your anthology capitals, you have a poem on every capital of a country. But were the poems written, or did you have to write some poems or ask people to write poems? How was this
Yes.
process?
Capitals mm, happened over a period of 3 years, and there I had to look for poets, because even among the poets, uh, even the most well networked poet does not know the poets from Africa, for example, or Latin America. So I had to
Mhm.
find very painfully poets from these capital cities, and then there were some capitals where which I could not find, poets of those capital cities, and so then I ventured to write a poem about those capital cities. For example, the poems I wrote, I just read to you: Tunis and
Mhm.
Nouakchott.
Right.
These are the capital cities where I could not find a single poet,
Mhm.
and I ventured to write poems on those
Mhm.
capitals, and I quite like them. Now I had the opportunity. For example, I wrote a poem about Moroni. Moroni is the capital of Comoros. And that poem I wrote about, I think, 7 years ago. And then
Mhm.
after 7 years, I went to Moroni. And then, today and I had forgotten completely about this poem. And today morning, I was reading this poem which I had written about Moroni. and I felt that, wow, I mean, it's 100% correct what I have written, So, and I have written this poem without traveling to Moroni, all based on my imagination, and of course reading things from the internet, and you know but when I felt today, when I read this poem today, I felt that, wow, I mean, how I mean, how sort of um, you know uh, I was sort of complimenting myself that, wow, this is so true. How can I get it 100%,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, for example, let me read that poem to you. Because,
Sure.
when I went to Comoros first time, Moroni is
Mhm.
the capital of Comoros. And
Okay.
when I went the first time there, I saw a fruit bat hanging from the tree,
Mhm.
and uh, and today when I was reading this poem, uh, uh, I found that, I had mentioned a fruit bat, and how did I do that? So
Mhm.
Moroni, here is a poem called Moroni. In the heart of fire,
Mhm.
at the foot of Mount Karthala,
Mhm.
boats are moored in the harbor, and
Mhm.
children swim in the Indian Ocean.
Mhm.
The setting sun paints the sky crimson, and the chirp of birds mixes with the sound of prayers from the ancient mosque. Giant fruit bats hover above my head. I rush
Mhm.
through a maze of narrow streets in the old Medina,
Mhm.
seeking serenity of turquoise.
Mhm.
And each one of these things turned out to be true. Ancient mosque, I mean, when I was there, ancient mosque, captures a major part of the city, and you can hear the prayers, in the evening, the ajan, and
Mhm.
chirping birds on trees, and the sound, the mixing sound of these two, and the setting sun, all the things. So I was, there is a saying in Hindi, jahan न जाए
Beautiful
रवि
poem.
वहां जाए कभी.
जहाँ है
जहां
रवि
न
वहाँ
जाए
जाए
रवि वहां
वहाँ
जाए
जाए.
कभी.
Wow.
Yes.
That's actually very beautiful, very profound. जहाँ ना जाए रवि, रवि मतलब कि सूरज.
Where the sun,
Couldn't go. The
even
poet would
where
went.
even at the place where sun cannot go,
Mm,
the
the
poet
poet,
goes.
the poet would venture there. Yeah, and it's very daring. I think it's very daring.
Right. Yes. I mean, I remember that, I mean, I wrote an apology in the introduction of this book that I have written poems on many capital cities. So I apologize in advance because I could not find poets about those places, and I had to write poems about those places. So if there is something, it does not come
Mhm.
out well, then please forgive me.
Yeah, I think to be a poet is something very vulnerable. While yes, poetry is strength. It gives you strength, but it's also very vulnerable area, especially when you are editing an anthology, when you're translating works. Abhay, let's talk about translation. You have recently
Right.
translated Meghdoot. It is published in Madras Courier. And in this
Right.
translation, you say that I translated this work because to help people fight lockdowns and pandemic. Can you throw some
Right.
light on this, your translation, and how does this poem help people cope up with quarantines and lockdowns?
So you see how spontaneous things happen, when the global pandemic began in
Mm-hmm.
March.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to read a poem by Simon Armitage, who is the poet
Mm-hmm.
laureate of UK, and
Mm-hmm.
and I and Simon had met earlier this year at Jaipur Lit Fest, and when I saw his poem, he had mentioned Meghdoot. He had uh, uh, he had taken inspiration from that poem by Kalidas, and since a long time, I had been planning this thing in my mind that I'm in Madagascar now, and I should rewrite Meghdut in the context of monsoon, which originates near Madagascar and goes all the way to India. And that project is still pending with me. Uh, but when I read his poem, I thought that I should read the original Meghdut. So his poem inspired me to read the original Meghdut, and I started reading original Meghdut. I found it so fascinating because his poem was called Lockdown, and this Meghdut is about a yaksha who is cursed to spend a year in on a hilltop called Ramgiri in central India, which is in the Makal range. I mean, as per the legends, and he can't go anywhere from there. So he urges the cloud, which is passing by, to take his message to his beautiful wife in the high Himalayas, in the city of Alaka, where the Lord of Wealth, Kuber, lives, and which is not far away from Mount Kailas, where Shiva and Parvati uh, spend time together. So, this poem, that if you do not have a way to go and meet your loved ones, send them a message. So now today we have these, we have different kind of clouds. The Google clouds and Microsoft clouds and so many other kind of clouds, and we have this yeah. But those days, when there were no such e-clouds, how Kalidas used his imagination to send a message through a cloud. And this poem, I started translating. I had the advantage of studying Sanskrit in my school, and when I read the original work of Kalidas, I said, "Oh wow, I know these words, and I know 90% of those words, and so with the help of little help, from dictionary and from already translated works before, I started working on a translation of my own. Why I did it? Because I read these translations, which created dissonance in me. Created unsatisfaction, dissatisfaction. Sorry, dissatisfaction within me, because these translations were slightly old. The language was not poetic, and these were mainly done by scholars, not poets. So I wanted to bring my own poetic language to express Kalidas into modern, in contemporary times. And this is how it happened. And then once I started reading Meghdut, I got interested. I started reading Ritu Samhar because there is so much of reference to that book. So it became sort of a chain thing, and I spent, I think, 4 months to translate these two books, and now they are ready to be published.
So how does the story that we have in Meghdut, what kind of lessons do we learn from this for this
So,
lockdown
so
period?
you know, so Meghdut is about not only about lockdown, but it also tells us that we are highly interdependent on our surroundings, plants, animals, clouds, and life is an interdependent thing. Civilization is interdependent thing. So Kalidas mentions 26 kinds of plants in Meghdut, and these plants are, each one of these have great description. He mentions animals and particular flowers which women in Alka use to as their cosmetics, And so without these plants and animals, we would not be able to have a civilization as we know it. We would become biorobots, counting statistics, or merely, banking upon economic growth. So here, Kalidas, we learn that we must have a balance with the nature, because without nature, it would not be possible to have the pleasure, the pleasure of senses. Uh, Without the fragrance of these flowers, without the without these birds who sing, without these rivers who give us fresh water, we would not be able to sustain our civilization. So it has a lesson for each one of us to for how we should protect our biodiversity and
Right.
should prevent climate change. It also gives us a new definition of nature. Most of us try to think, nature as kind of mother nature, but Kalidas gives a sensual, uh, sensual role to nature. For example, he tells the cloud, who is married to the lightning, that on the way to uh, high Himalayas, do not forget to take interest in rivers who are described as beautiful women. So so uh, uh, he also gives these sensual roles to various kind of plants and animals, and like elephants, for example, or even drums. So they all have sensual uh, characters. So it's also important, I think, because we forget at some point of time that you know essentially we are sensual creatures, and we should look at the nature in that way. That way you can uh, you, you have a more interactive uh, and interdependent relationship with the nature. It's not merely like namaste from a distance, but you sort of you know mm, have a sensuous perception, and it enriches our life.
Mhm. Well said, well said. Abhay, now before I move to the rapid fire round, I would request you to read some poems that could be the poems in your edited anthologies, or some works that you've translated, some excerpts maybe from Meghdoots.
Yeah, so I'll read from Meghdut,
Okay.
uh, which I've translated. Where Yaksha, with charming women as companions, revel on their palace terraces paved with moonstones, resembling flowers under starlight, addicting themselves to Ratifala wine pressed from Kalpataru, Puskara drums beating gently, producing deep and soft sound like yours. Here the Yaksha is addressing to the cloud. Where at the dawn, the night path of the amorous women are revealed by fallen mandara flowers from their ringlets, golden lotuses torn, fallen from their ears, threads of their necklaces broken, pearls scattered, fragrant from the perfume of their breasts. Where the lovers, full of desire, with their impudent hands, undo the west string and toss aside the slackened silk garments of Yasha women, who covered in shame throw a handful of churna on the jewel lamps with high flames. Ah, but in vain. These are three examples from uh, Meghdut. And here is a little small selection from Ritu Samhar, the sixth season, summer.
Mm-hmm.
Round hips, their beauty augmented with soft silk and jeweled belts, their sandal, pasted bosoms
Mm-hmm.
shining with strings of pearls, hair fragrant with subtle and lingering perfumes.
Mm-hmm.
Women soothe the senses of their lovers
Mm-hmm.
with these in the scorching summer, my love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's quite a loveology, the combination of nature, beauty, and love.
Yes. So that's something is eternal. For example, nature is eternal and love is eternal. So look at the genius of Kalidas to infuse the two, love and
Mhm,
nature, sensuality and nature, and
mhm,
you have an immortal combination
mhm,
which appeals to every generation.
mhm. And that's why I say
So
that, literally nomadism has been unprecedented in these times because of digital media.
right. It's a. I take you to Dharmakirti, one of the vice chancellors of Nalanda University, from where I come. And Dharmakirti was a very well-known monk, and uh, he wrote this poem, which is philosophy, and
Mhm.
and it's called "Making Love to Her."
Okay.
Making love to her lasts only moments, like a
Mhm.
dream, illusion, ending in regret. I reflect upon this truth 100 times, yet my heart can't forget the gazelle eyed girl. This is translated from Sanskrit.
Wonderful. Mhm.
Maybe a poem uh, from Telugu,
Yeah, like
uh,
to.
trans- translated by Amanda Bell.
Mhm.
The poem is called Why Marry? And it's by Vemana.
Mhm.
Why would you marry, have children, call woos down upon yourself? It defies logic, like hoisting a boulder from the earth to bear upon your head. We know all about it. When a rich man has a rash, but who ever hears about a poor man's nuptials?
Interesting.
A poem called Shapes by Chokha Mela,
Mhm.
translated from Marathi by Rohini Mokashi Punekar.
Mhm.
The sugar cane is crooked, but
Mhm.
not its juice. The bow is curved, not the arrow.
Mhm.
The river is bent, but
Mhm.
not its water. Chokha
True.
is twisted,
Uh-huh.
not his faith. Why are you drawn to the shape of a thing?
Wow.
I think it
Deep.
also answers a question about poets and
Mm.
poetry.
Uh-huh.
Should one focus on poetry or on poets?
Indeed, indeed. Abhay, how about reading from one of your translations? Before you left Brazil, you gifted to your poet friends here their poetry in English translation when you got this book, the
The new
contemporary.
Brazilian poems.
So, how about reading one of Brazilian poems? Since I'm in Brazil, though you've left the place, I'm here, and I very much interact with these poets, and I'm sure that they'll be very happy to hear their poem in this show.
Yes. Here are like just one line poems, which it's a poem called Negotiation
Mm-hmm.
by Francisco Albim.
Mm-hmm.
Negotiation. We will deal with it later. Depois a gente acerta.
Uh-huh.
I have several favorite poems, but there's one poem which I really like. Let me see, where is this poem? It's a poem which I think has great wisdom. It talks about constructing, like, as in marriages and in other human interactions in relationships. This whole challenge of shifting maybe to a new relationship, or so this is a poem. It's called Error by Eunice Ahuda.
Mhm.
I built my house on the sand. Every day I start again. Ejo, edifique minha casa sobre a areia. Todo dia recomeço. So,
Ottimo,
so
very
this
good.
is a poem, I think, which really speaks to me, because I think, most of uh, relationship are based on this renewal and
Mhm.
this forgiveness, and that we start new. We should forget and forgive and start anew. We should. Most of us have built our houses on the sand,
Yes,
and
true.
we should start it again and again and again.
That,
So this is
this is wonderful.
maybe,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, shall we move on to the rapid fire round, which is one of my favorite rounds of this session?
Sure, sure.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions. You have to just answer immediately. If you don't want to answer, you can just say pass. Okay. So,
Great.
which is the oldest book in your home library?
Oh, I'll have to. Oldest means what? Oldest in terms of when it appeared, or
The first book
it
that
was published?
the book that you've been carrying with you all the time, everywhere.
Oh, I mean, not like something like Veda, which was written 3,000 years. Not oldest in that term, right?
That time you didn't have your home library.
Yeah, I think the oldest book I have is Rashmi Rathi, which is I shared with you that this is the book I grew up reading. And then my writing came from a book called The Old Man and the Sea by uh, you
Ernest
know
Hemingway.
yeah, by Ernest Hemingway. And The Old Man and the Sea is a book which I read during my JNU days, and I and that was a small book and very powerful book, which sort of tempted me to write my own books. So it's only, I think, 27,000 words, and
Yes.
the total number of words in that book. And uh, uh, and so I thought that why can't I try writing a book?
Yes.
So I think
This,
that's
this,
another old book which I have.
this book has this very, very famous phrase that a man can be defeated but never destroyed.
Yes, correct. Yes, a man can be
Indomitable
defeated but
spirit
not
of
destroyed.
man.
Yes.
Yes, yes. My next question is that you speak many languages apart from Maghai, Hindi, English. You speak Russian, Portuguese, bit of Spanish, Nepali. So, other than your mother tongue, which is your favorite language among all of these?
Yes, so it's I mean, I don't have a favorite language. I love all languages, and I mean, I speak Maghi with my mother, and other languages with other people. So
Mhm.
it just depends on with whom you are talking to, and mm, but I think I'm a little biased towards English, because this is the language in which I do most of my work. So you know,
Mhm.
uh, it's and I mean, English means like the global English. It's not the Oxbridge English, or
English.
Spanglish, but
All
I
right.
mean English which you can which could be
Mm.
understood everywhere.
Everywhere. So you've lived in many places, many continents, many countries. One place that you would want to revisit and live at for some more time.
Yeah, Nepal, I guess.
Oh,
Because it's so close to my home in Bihar, and I don't have to go even to Delhi to go to Nepal. And
mm,
I love the mountains and the food and the
mm.
people, and I speak Nepali, so
Right. So now, if Abhay Kumar was not a poet and diplomat, what would he have been? An alternate profession you would have chosen for yourself?
well, I mean, I could have been anything, I mean, I could have been, if I would not have cleared the UPSC exam, I would have been, I think, teaching, in the coaching classes, coaching people to become civil servants. And
Mm,
before that, if I could not have managed to come to Delhi and
mm,
get admission in Delhi University, then
mm,
I was trying to be a doctor. So maybe I would have continued with that if I would have got through the medical
mm,
examination, all India medical examination.
mm,
And But when I was a child, I mean, I wanted to be, I wanted to be a movie star. So it's like, things change after I mean, everything changes, and that brings me to your question, that how things change, I mean, the dreams we have at one point of life, they become meaningless after, and they don't appeal to you anymore. And so with the poetry, I mean, it's once you have read so much of poetry, you start liking different kind of things.
right.
So so things change, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. But now, I mean, I would like to do nothing and just listen to birds and sea waves and wind, and just
Mhm.
be somewhere.
Just, yeah. So, Abhi, the last question is, can you give one poetry prompt for our listeners, for our audience?
Mm, so poetry prompt mean, what do you mean by poetry
A word,
prompt? I mean,
a
a line.
phrase, a word, a phrase, an
Sorry.
idea that a word, a phrase, an idea that you think people can write on, can use as the subject of their poems, or that can
Uh,
trigger
right.
in their
Mm,
minds.
so mm, that's a that's an interesting one. I would say. Um, mm, Let me think. These days, I've been writing anthems on the neighboring planets. Uh, so I've just maybe I would like more people to take interest in the planets in the solar system, and
Cosmos.
yeah, mm, and why not Jupiter? Today is Thursday, and and Jupiter is, it's named after Jupiter, planet Jupiter, and so how to, I mean, how to write something about Jupiter,
Mhm.
um, the giant among the planets, and so I'll have to think of, I mean, uh, maybe I can give a line from the Jupiter uh, anthem. let me let me see. Celestial break dancer,
Mhm. Celestial break
break
dancer.
dancer.
Great dance. That's beautiful. Celestial. That's a wonderful prompt. So, Abhay, we have to bring this session to an end. It was a real joy to engage with you. We discussed on various aspects of poetry, vis-a-vis geography, vis-a-vis place, vis-a-vis people, the other culture, the conscience of the world. It was a really engaging session. It was great to hear about translation, ideas about creating your own anthologies, of editing works, of how poems should sort of melt in your ears, in your minds, in your hearts, how you can revisit poems, how it brings joys. Thank you so much for coming to TMYS Academy's poetry session, and stay safe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelly, for this wonderful interview. Wish you the very best in all your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you.